we are aware of the many times that he used men, and we appreciate that. But we are also reminded that God, Jesus had a place for women, all right? And he would give them an ear, he would listen to them. And you can remember it was quite a patriarchal society, but Jesus himself had space for women. So we are happy to be beneficiaries of that, and to even acknowledge our leadership, Reverend Tom, that even he has created space for women, and for women to serve and to have a relationship with God. So today we are here to celebrate that. And from the very many women in the Bible, we can learn something from them, you know, and we had a moment where we shared what we know and what we have learned. And today, I'll specifically focus on one lady, and most of us may or may not know this story, but the lady I want to focus on is called Abigail. I'm sure some of us have heard this story, but for the sake of those that have not heard, I'd like us to turn to our Bibles and read, and I'll ask Pastor Abijah to help me with that. First Samuel. And as it's being projected, we can read together. It's quite a long passage, so help her. Let's read this together.
And Samuel died.
But in it is packaged very many things that together we're going to unpack. So from the beginning of this story, we see that David was fugitive at this point, him and his team. So they were running away from Saul. And now they had been in the wilderness for a while. So they met Nabal's team, his workers, and they supported him. Alright? Then at this point, now David needs help from Nabal. And he sends his men. In fact, there's where he says, go in peace. Go and say, peace, in peace we come. So they come in peace, but the response that they get from Nabal is quite concerning. Alright? So think about it this way. These are 10 men who have been in the wilderness. They are anxious because they are on the run. They are hungry and they are tired. Alright? We know that English proverb that says a hungry man is an angry man. So you can imagine what they are feeling. And then they come, and this is Nabal's response. Alright? So I'm trying to set the stage for the situation. Then here we have David. David, who is admired by his team. He's leading his team and he's trying to show his team, I know where I'm taking you, and you people are going to be safe. So by this time, when Nabal is talking to him, you can see that already David has a lot of burdens. He has the burden of leadership, and because we know his story, he also has, we can assume that he also has a few identity issues. Remember him growing up, he was not the one that was acknowledged in his family. He also faced a lot of opposition from Saul. So you can easily say that he has some identity things going on inside him. So Nabal, in his response, this is what Nabal says. Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? The country is full of runaway servants these days. Do you think I'm going to take good bread and wine and meat freshly butchered for my sheep shearers and give it to men I've never laid eyes on? Who knows where they've come from? Do you really want to tell me Nabal didn't know who David was? He knew. He was just being sarcastic. So when he asked, who is this David? It's with an attitude. So I want you to talk to your neighbor, and I want you to say this thing in your mother tongue. You know, so there's just how mother tongue brings out things. If someone was asking, and who is this son of Jesse? Just, in fact, even your face expression is already changing. Talk to your neighbor. In your mother tongue, how would you ask that question? Just ask. How would it sound? Okay. talk to your neighbor. Just remove it in your language. How would it sound? Marcus is even doing the hand like this. That's even how your body follows that question. Yeah? So I want a few representatives, just of some communities. I want a few representatives. Who will volunteer? Just one community. Lydia? And started telling him, now here, there's the Kikuyu Kiama things, okay? And for you to be successful, you know you need to be part of this. And so, of course, we are Christians and don't believe in those things. And so the big question that someone would be asked was, who is your father? So usually it has an attitude towards it. So when Nabal is asking, and who is the son of Jesse, there's actually an element of discrimination, all right? So this was quite piercing I'm trying to create the emotion that David could have been feeling. It was quite piercing. So anything to do with whose son are you, who is your father, many times comes with elements of ego, elements of identity. So Nabal was really going after David, all right? So at this point, David is outraged. You know, he's angry. And he's thinking, how dare you ask me that? And automatically, by this interaction, Abigail is put in a difficult situation. So our topic for today is what to do when put in a difficult situation. So by this fight that these men are having, because we only see what Nabal did, but we are not seeing how even David is getting provoked. So these are two people that have already heightened the emotions, and at this point, if it continues like that, then everything is going to calm down. So Abigail was automatically put in a difficult situation. One more activity I want you to do, I want to talk to your neighbor and just share in a minute. How have you experienced a difficult situation? When have you been put in a difficult situation? It could be a big one or a small one. But talk to your neighbor, and with the background I've created, just share something when you felt you had been put in a difficult situation. In 1 minute. Talk to your neighbor. Maybe I've already put you in a difficult situation by saying talk to your neighbor. You can start with that. Something they've done. So it's something that we can identify with, which also means, male or female, there are many things that we can learn from Abigail. There's just how Abigail responded after having been put in this difficult situation. So these are the things that Abigail did. The first thing that Abigail did was, she had the wisdom to listen to the young shepherd. Abigail had the wisdom to listen to the young shepherd. If you remember how the story started, it explains to us that Abigail and Nabal were very rich, okay? They had a lot of property. And what it had made Nabal, it had made him arrogant. But the truth is, he was rich. So it means she was also a partaker of that wealth. So at this point, Abigail is a rich woman. And she could easily have discounted this shepherd boy. A shepherd boy in this context probably is just someone. He was probably dusty, not very rich. A shepherd means maybe he's used to working for others and may not have his own, flock. So this was someone lowly socially, if you compare him to Abigail. But she was wise, okay? She did not discount what this young man was saying, because she quickly assessed the situation and knew that her household was in danger. It did not matter who was telling her. She took time to listen to this young shepherd boy. So that is the first thing, all right? Abigail had an understanding that status is not important. Wisdom is much more important. If we look at Proverbs chapter 16, verse 16, says, how much better to get wisdom than gold, to get insight rather than silver. So this verse underscores the importance of prioritizing wisdom over material possessions. So Abigail chose to prioritize wisdom and discernment over her husband's wealth and arrogance. I was saying in the morning that Abigail was a rich woman, so she probably was wearing a lot of gold, she probably looked a certain way. But for this shepherd boy to feel that he could even approach her, it meant there was something about her that was gentle, alright? There was something about her that was humble. And that should make us think, for some of us, they only disconnect me, pesa. Pesa ikiingia, we will know your true colors. But for us, some of us are humble because we don't have money. Is that true? Yes. Yeah, but Abigail had the money. She had the wealth. And she had a demeanor about her that encouraged this young shepherd boy to come to her. So the first thing is that Abigail had the wisdom to listen to the young shepherd. The second thing that Abigail had the wisdom to take immediate action. So there was an element of urgency, alright? So many times we may be confronted with genuine danger, but then we move into paralyzed fear, alright? As opposed to taking immediate action. So there's an element of urgency and the element of action, which we'll talk about later. So she flew into action. At this point, she chose courage over fear. You may be in that situation, you know the right thing to do, but you may actually choose fear instead of courage. And sometimes fear can even be made to look spiritual. Like maybe nimeachia Mungu. Yet you need to know. Imagine if Abigail said nimeachia Mungu. What would have happened? So we can even hide in fear and label it other things. She could even have said, wacha vile mzee akasema. And then what would have happened? Alright? So if it's fear, look at fear in the face and do the right thing. So Abigail got into action, flew into action. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep dressed out and ready for cooking, a bushel of roasted grain, 100 raisin cakes, the 200 fig cakes, and she had it all loaded on some donkeys. I was joking in the morning and saying, look at her level of planning. This is a side point. Look at her level of planning. Right now, if in your house now you needed to set chapo kumi, a dish of lengu, what would happen? I was saying some of us decide what is going to be eaten on your way home. So hiyo ndo unaamua, unapiga simu unasema nataka tulikula leo tutakula. Then you call and then hapo nunua nyanya and then enda pale. And really sometimes it's not an economic thing, it's really a lack of planning, right? So you can see she was quite organized in her planning. So she did that and sent the food ahead of her. So at this point she knew David needed food and the supplies. That is what they had asked for. So she quickly selected provisions and sent them. And again, you see that she was clever to send them ahead. She was trying to pave a way. She was sending the food ahead of time. This reminds us of when Jacob sent gifts to his brother Esau before meeting him. So she started to make peace. Alright? So even in our homes, sometimes some conversations are better off after food. There's something you could be trying to advocate for, but when people are hungry, they may not listen. So there was an element of timing that she put into place. So Proverbs chapter 3, verse 13 to 18. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 13 to 18. It says, "Blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed." So we continually see that Abigail embraced, in every decision she was making, she was embracing wisdom, all right? So the first thing, what did Abigail do? She listened. The other thing is, she acted immediately. The third thing is that Abigail had the wisdom to act with humility. It was not her fault. She's not the one who had provoked David. Alright? And whatever Nabal had done was not legally wrong. Alright? Legally, Nabal had not broken the law. So, she could even have gone there and lectured David. Because why is David being entitled about her things? You know, she could easily have gone there to settle scores with David herself. Because Nabal had not done anything wrong. Legally had not crossed. Okay? So it was more culturally and socially. The offense was more cultural and social, but it was not. So Abigail acted and responded in humility. So she took the blame. Okay? She knew these two people are already very angry, and everyone now is trying to prove. So if I take on that path, then there's going to be disaster. So she humbled herself. In fact, she says, "Don't dwell on what Nabal did. He acts out of meaning of his name. Foolish oozes from him." Abigail grabbed David's attention with her humility and submission. Alright? So she even went and knelt. That's what we see in the Bible. She went and knelt before David. I was sharing in the first service. I have a friend who employed a girl from Uganda. So we know East Africans were very different. Ugandan, Kenyans, and Tanzanians, and now Rwandese were very different. So this lady from Uganda, every time she would serve my friend's husband, she would kneel. You know, she would kneel and say a few things. Hey, 1 week, she was fired. Akaambiwa tu, "Mungu akubariki. Thank you for your service." And we were laughing about it because you can see the impact of that act of humility. Okay? So this Abigail did that. She went and knelt in front of David. Remember, this is a rich woman, and she understands the social dynamics at play. She went and knelt down in front of David in humility and started to talk to him. By this time, already she has softened his heart. Now he's listening, alright? And she starts to talk to him. And she does it in humility. She doesn't shout at him. She doesn't try to prove a point or to make sense of it. She starts to talk to him gently. Proverbs 15:1 reminds us, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." So see how Abigail responds in this situation, and think about your situation. Maybe you've been somewhere and someone talks to you, and you can see the way they're talking to you, they want a fight, you know? And in our culture, we even say it. We even say, mtu ananitafuta na atanipata. Atanipata. We know it. And even when you tell your friends that, they tell you, awache kukutafuta. It's something we encourage each other. But what does the Bible say? That in such a time, the appropriate thing is to respond in gentleness. And when you respond in gentleness, it will turn away the anger. It will diffuse the conflict, which is something now we learn from Abigail. Alright? The first thing that Abigail did is that she knew how to appeal to the whole person. If you look at her strategy, so David was hungry and he was angry. Alright? So the first thing she did is she gave him food, knowing that she was addressing his physical needs and those of his warriors. But she also knew she needed to help him feel the right emotions. Instead of anger, she wanted him to feel compassion. By humbling himself, she helped him calm down and connected with him. Are you seeing the strategy? Alright? That made it possible for her to appeal to his common sense, his values, and his heart for God. She also painted a picture for a better future for him. That, in my opinion, is a masterclass in communication, right?
Yes.
Just imagine, she's like, first, kula kwanza. So he eats, and then now appeals to his heart. So she starts with the stomach, and then the heart, and then the mind. So by this time, even David is calm. By this time, he's ready to be rational. He's ready to be logical. But how do we start most times? We start with, if you're a man, you start with logic. And if you're a woman, you start with emotion. Just see the confusion there. I'm sure if you're married, you can identify with that. Because everyone is coming from a direction. And nothing can be resolved, when everyone is coming from an angle. So Abigail did it strategically. Feed the men first, and then appeal to his heart. Appeal even to his ego, and then now rationalize with him. So even in your leadership, in whoever you're leading, whether you're leading a family, whether you're leading a team, no communicator can be successful and compete against urgent physical needs. Alright? You cannot be ignorant of physical needs, even if you're such a great communicator. At this point, if I go past a certain time, I'll also lose all of you. Because it will be lunchtime. So I also need to know I'm just within a certain bandwidth. Alright? So even with children, sometimes you're very hard on them, but you have not acknowledged their physical needs. Have you addressed the physical, before you even go into the discipline issue, have you addressed the physical need? Maybe this child is just hungry and doesn't know how to express that. Maybe he doesn't even know he's hungry. So he's throwing a tantrum, but if you managed that fast, then we're not saying it is good to throw tantrums. Then at that point they can listen to you, all right? Sometimes it is your spouse, whether male or female. Sometimes they're uncomfortable to a certain degree. So if you address the discomfort, then you start to get leverage in communication. So this is what we learned from Abigail. She knew how to appeal to the whole person, all right? So appeal to the heart first, then the mind. So when she appealed to the mind, she appealed to his values and his interests. And then she showed him a better future for himself. At this point, David was clouded, which takes me to my other point, that Abigail had the wisdom to put things into perspective for David. At this point, as I tried to illustrate, David was not seeing clearly. His emotions were clouding him. He was seeing his anger, he was seeing the offense. And so Abigail took time to remind him. So she says, "My master fights God's battles. As long as you live, no evil will stick to you. Your God-honored life is tightly bound in the bundle of God-protected life. But the lives of your enemies will be hurled aside as a stone is thrown from a sling. When God completes all the goodness he has promised my master, and he sets you up as a prince over Israel, my master will not have his dead weight in his heart, the guilt of an avenging murder." So Abigail helped David to see things in perspective. Because by all this time, in his history, he had not accumulated innocent blood. He had not killed anyone. He did not have the blood of innocent people on his hands. But at this point, he was about to do that. So Abigail helped to bring him back, to remind him, to paint a bigger picture, to move him from his present emotion so that he can see the bigger picture. And so David was able to gain perspective. He was reminded of his true mission, that he knew, I have a higher calling and I'm going to be king of Israel. So let me not have this weight on my heart. So she was able to do that. So you can see many instances where she's applying wisdom. And David really was grateful for that. Okay? So James chapter 3, verse 17 to 18. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. So we see Abigail being considerate, peace-loving, impartial, and sincere. Alright? So she could easily have gone and started to, in our language, started to torture who? David. Alright? She could have. Because by this time he's listening to her. But she did not even focus on that. She focused on his future, his leadership. She sold vision to him that get over this small thing, think about the future. And at that point, if she would have tortured him and he kills Nabal, she would have probably been rescued from Nabal. But she allowed God to work on that. At this point, she chose to be considerate, to be submissive. So what kind of person are you and me? When in the office, someone comes and says, so-and-so has done this. Are you the one that tortures, and continues to light the fire? Or do you take the path of being peaceful, being considerate, trying to bring harmony and unity? So we see Abigail doing that. Okay? The other thing that we learn from Abigail is that wisdom has to be paired with action to get positive results. So it was not enough that she was wise. It was not enough. She also paired it with action. Because wisdom without action is like you have a gift that you never unwrap. You have a gift that never helps you. Alright? It's like a beautiful meal that is cooked, but it is never eaten. So nothing is accomplished and nothing changes. Alright? And the opposite is true. What is action without wisdom? It's like a storm. And it creates distraction. So wisdom paired with action can save families, as we have seen in this case. It can bring back together enemies. It can change the world. So we see even David in his leadership, many times he paired wisdom and action. So I think we have both extremes. We have non-Christians who just do action without wisdom. And then we have many Christians who have wisdom without action. And so no good is achieved. So without the wisdom that we are learning and gaining, if we do not take action, then it's not going to bring forth any good. So wisdom has to be paired with action. And in some cases, like Abigail's case, urgent action, right? So the other thing that we see is that wisdom is very important, and it is what actually saved the day for Abigail. Because she went ahead and later on got married to David, and this rescued her entire household, and she found herself in the lineage of Christ. She found her children now got a new identity. They got a new heritage. They got a new level of protection and provision. You can imagine now the king is their father. So out of wisdom, she was able to move her family from destruction into a life of redemption. So according to James chapter 1 verse 5 to 6, we're encouraged. We can use the Amplified version if you have it. Found it? James chapter 1, 5 to 6. I can read as we look for it. If any of you lacks wisdom, that is to guide him through a decision or circumstance, he is to ask of our benevolent God, who gives to everyone generously and without rebuke or blame, and it will be given to him. But he must ask for wisdom in faith without doubting God's willingness to help. For the one who doubts is like a billowing surge of the sea that is blown out and tossed by the wind. Let's read together. If any of you lacks wisdom to guide him through a decision or circumstance, he is to ask of our benevolent God, who gives to everyone generously and without rebuke or blame, and it will be given to him. So I want us to spend a few minutes, think about the situation that maybe you're facing, the difficult situation that you are facing. What would it mean to respond in wisdom? What do you need to do? How do you need to respond? So that it can be in a way that is congruent to what we've learned today. That is God honoring. That will bring redemption. That will reduce the chaos. What is the best way in which you can respond to the difficult situation that you may be in? So I want us to spend a few minutes to think about that, to pray for wisdom. And as I do that, I'll invite Reverend Tom.